What's going on, everybody, and welcome back. And if you thought lighting up the Statue of Liberty last week wasn't going to have immediate ramifications on this episode, then you were probably sadly mistaken because now New York is just open for business. And while I thought and still think it is a terrible idea, Maggie and Renetta thought something different. So in episode 3, titled Immigrants, they waste no time bringing people across those shores. This episode, in my opinion, was a little bit different. I would definitely call it a slower episode. I didn't necessarily like a lot of the things that happened in the episode, but the core thing that they were going for as far as the storyline that they're trying to push for the season, it is still intact. While I thought it was a little bit too early to be partying at the bar or giving these people that you don't even know weapons to a degree, everything is kind of just happening, in my opinion. That's kind of the best way I can put it. They're just kind of just moving, and then they're hoping that everything just works out with no real structured plan. And we could see these things kind of play out in the power vacuum that seems to be brewing, the medical supplies running low, and clearly there's some unaddressed trauma amongst our characters. But before we dive into anything, I'm going to go ahead and give you the spoiler warning for episode 3 because we're going to run through everything pretty quickly today. So if you haven't watched episode 3 yet, go ahead and hit pause, put me in a watch for later, come back and check me out then, and then tell me your thoughts on this episode after you've gotten your full dosing of it. So the first thing I want to talk about today is kind of where last episode left off and where this one basically picks up, and that's the fallout from the deaths of the Crow and the Dama in the first 2 episodes. Now, we saw last episode that Negan more than likely, it wasn't shown on camera, but Negan more than likely killed the Dama and Maggie went and found her. So in this episode, she goes to find Negan to address it and just let him know that, hey, the Dama killed herself, and I'll put the air quotes up for that. And obviously Maggie probably knows that Negan is the one that put the Dama to rest, but Negan just sits back and kind of just gives something that reminds me of when he was with the Saviors. His response, basically good riddance. She's gone. That problem is solved. Hey, water under the bridge. It needed to happen. But Negan lying to Maggie in this moment basically reestablishes the lack of trust that they may have between each other, and Negan knows that he can't tell Maggie that he actually did it. And honestly, I don't think Maggie even wants to hear that he's the one that did it. I just think they both just want to be in denial on this situation, even though Negan obviously knows he did it and Maggie knows as well that he did it. But please don't tell me, even though I'm going to bring this to your attention. But I think the reason for this scene and for the deaths of the Dama and the Crow was basically to establish that there are no more of the old overlords here. We have to verbally put them to rest. They're done. I would be surprised if it comes back up again. Maybe it will in a throwaway line, or maybe if some trust issues happen, but I don't even see a world where they even talk about this again. They're just going to keep pushing forward. And that basically leads into my second point, which is the immigrants that came over from Jersey. Now, last episode left us thinking it was just one group that was going to be coming over, but we find out in this episode that it's actually 2 groups that are actually battling with each other on the Jersey shores or in Jersey somewhere, I think the Newark area. And that's the big twist in that situation. Not only are people over there, but they've been fighting, and now they're bringing that fight to your shores. So what are you going to do about it? You know what? We're going to help everybody. Bring them all in. Their leaders, Bauer and Claudia, offer conflicting stories, and they started with us, and no, they killed our people first, and we were just retaliating, leaving Maggie and Renetta and Negan and everybody else to just sift out who could be telling the truth. But in my opinion, and what I would do in this situation if I were in an apocalypse, is I might take Negan's advice. Choose a side. Kill the other one. That is grim, that is very pragmatic, but it makes a lot of sense. And to survive in a world like this, decisions like that may have to be made. But Maggie and Renata basically double down on their idealistic equal opportunity society. We're going to help everybody. We're going to save as many people as we can. And then we'll sort everything else out when the aftermath just kind of dies down. But let's just save everybody first. Now, I don't know if she has any detective skills or something like that, but I don't think Renata is the one, which is probably why Negan and Dillard take a swing at it and fail later on in this episode. These people clearly aren't going to answer your questions. They're giving you the silent treatment. I don't think I've heard the leaders really speak a word yet outside of just blaming the other side. When they were asked other questions, I don't remember hearing them say anything. So I think that says a lot that these people aren't vibing with y'all and you're letting them in. You gave them tools, sure, to help clean up Central Park, but those same tools could be, light weapons. They're not guns or anything like that, but hey, if you swing an axe hard enough, I'm sure you could chop somebody's head off. But we'll see how Maggie and Renata basically mediate this situation. We know they want this to be a successful community, but bringing over 142 new people, I think it's going to put a lot of stress and strain on this situation, and we already see how that plays out at the hospital. Because the instant logistical strain that's been put over there is seemingly trying to turn this show from a zombie apocalypse type show into maybe a apocalyptic medical drama. And I'm just kidding about that, but it does seem that we're spending a lot of time in this hospital. And we see Luis and Herschel in action, and I'm not sure how much time has passed by, but Herschel is over here putting trachs in people's throats and giving CPR, and he either retains information extremely quickly. And I know Luis is calling out a lot of things to him while he's also helped saving lives, but Herschel did his thing. He did a really good job, and he'll be a doctor before you know it. He'll probably be a doctor at this rate by the end of the season, and he'll just be doing full-blown surgeries at that point. Now, all of this didn't happen without some dread thrown in there as well, because the hospital's having power outages with, fuel. On top of those power outages, people are flatlining and dying in the hospital. And we all know from the beginning that once you die because everybody's infected, you turn into one of the zombies. So we have zombies popping up, we have power outages, we have people dying, we have people trying to save lives. So, it's a whole lot of chaos in this episode, but definitely in this hospital. And then we learn from Luis that they basically have burned through a lot of their stockpile. While it was just a few of them, they had plenty of food, plenty of medicine, plenty of everything to just live for a while. But Maggie and Renata came up with this plan to let people in a little bit too soon because you haven't even fully established yourself yet. But yet now, because you're going into the wintertime and you want to basically start growing this flourishing community now, which in my opinion is terrible timing, but I understand you have to worry about your own survival. But maybe they should have put a better infrastructure in place first before they tried to invite people in. But then again, if they did that, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or we may be having a bigger conversation because there may be a lot more infighting. So who knows which way that would have went, but infrastructure is clearly a problem. And all of this even forces Negan to use some of his offhand skills, because we see that he's going to become a brewmaster all of a sudden to keep the bar running, because they burn through all of their alcohol to help save bodies, because they use the alcohol as a different sedative because they started running out of morphine. But the fourth point I want to make about this episode is the shift to Central Park and expansion over that direction. This entire thing is basically drawn up in an effort to give all of these new people a reason to want to fight to live. Something to fight for. They take out both groups to this field. They say, hey, plow the land. We could all grow this community together. This could be a farmland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But while some of the people did start grabbing tools and going to work immediately, we saw that the two leaders of this group, Bauer and Claudia, are just standing there with tools in hand, giving each other the death stare. So sure, on the surface, this looked like a triumph and they're on their way to just building this society. But like I keep reiterating, if you look underneath a little bit, you put weapons in the hands of people who have already been fighting each other. And if they could get enough people to think the way they think, maybe the leaders come together and they're like, hey, you know what, Claudia or Bauer, let's do this together. We can take all these people out. We've seen what they have. We've seen what they can do. They're telling us about everything. So why don't we just take what's theirs, or we take control and make them work for us? I can see a situation like that playing out as we get further into this season, because it'll be interesting to see how people who hated each other 24 hours ago and were fighting each other on the Jersey shores may potentially come together now in New York when there is something to fight for, because they have a lot to lose there now. But let's talk about the characters a little bit, because like we've been saying, Maggie is operating as her best Rick Grimes. I'm not sure why they're trying to recycle this a little bit. They could have did this a little bit more originally, but they want Maggie to sit in this Rick Grimes role. I would understand it more if Rick Grimes was dead, but maybe just bring him into the show if you just want to have that type of role. But Maggie is the beacon of hope. She wants so bad to turn this desolate city into a utopia. And I think she's blinding herself to the obvious threats just to make all of this happen. Because trying to bring people to New York, in my opinion, was already a bad idea. But to bring in two different groups that have been fighting is an even worse idea. And to think that you can just make these people come together and form some type of alliance and you all could just live in harmony together, I don't think it's going to happen. But I could be wrong. Negan, meanwhile, is operating basically with a clean slate. Doesn't have any current beefs with anybody. Well, maybe Renata and him are having a little contentious relationship, because it's going to be interesting to see if Negan can live up under their rules, because Negan isn't really the ones who have ever really followed anyone's rules completely. He's always bent the rules when he saw fit. But I appreciate them leaning back into some of his old Saviour instincts when we see him have Claudia and Bauer strung up and he puts a bag over or blindfolds Dillard and spins them around, and let's play the pinata a little bit because these two people are going to talk, even though they don't talk. And that was a little bit interesting that they were willing to die potentially. So that tells me that there is something else going on with Bauer and Claudia that we don't know, because they were tight-lipped when Dillard was spinning around with Lucio in his hand. Yeah, they might back up a little bit, but they never spoke a word. And that is dedication that comes from something that they're either protecting or something that they're trying to take. So we'll see how it all plays out. But then let's talk about Dillard, because his mental state, in my opinion, is getting just a little bit weirder. You know, even though he steps up for Negan and helps him kill a walker in the tank room, once we get back to the bar and we go up to his room when he goes to change clothes, we see that he has a female walker strung up in his room. I think it's Titicaca, but that's not even the worst part. He is in there hallucinating as if he's hearing this walker, not make walker noises, but speaking words to him. So Dillard is losing his goddamn mind, and there's no other way to put it. And I think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic, because Negan is definitely going to find out about this at some point. Something is going to happen where that walker is going to get loose, even though I believe it's nailless and toothless. But the fact of the matter is that it's there, and it's going to make Negan look at Dillard a certain type of way, because here we are yet again with a guy who has a monster in his room. The governor had his daughter, I believe, in a closet. There are a few other instances of people keeping these zombies like they're real people. We could save them. The fact that these people will keep the dead and think that they're going to come back to their real life at some point, and we know that's never going to happen. There should be a special place to put crazy people like this, because there's nothing that you could tell me to make me think that Dillard is this sane guy, because we already thought it was a little crazy that he had the zombies tied up at the bar. I get it. You're at the bar, you're drinking. Maybe you just want somebody to talk to. But now that we know you have one strung up in your room, I'm starting to look at you a little bit different, Dillard. So one of the things that I want to point out, and I guess we could consider this maybe a hidden detail or maybe even a clue, because we don't know how it's going to play out exactly yet. Like I said, Bauer and Claudia were very, very tight-lipped, even when they were sitting in front of death potentially. The only thing that we've heard them really say is they did it. They did it first. No, that's about it. So it leads me to believe that there is something else that is going on with them, at least one of them, if not both. They left Jersey in a large group, especially when you put both groups together. They left Jersey to come over here because they saw the light on the Statue of Liberty come on. And obviously they need some medical assistance because they clearly have been fighting with each other. But what else is over there? Even though the statue light came on, and yes, you guys may need help and resources, it just makes me question what's over there that pushed you guys over here. Could it be the CRM potentially? Because I don't think that they're gone. But I just feel like while they're world building, and there definitely are, it just makes me question those two Jersey groups a little bit more, because the fact that they didn't say anything, they came from over there to here, and for what purpose other than, to get medical help? Outside of that, and you guys fighting, and I guess those are maybe good reasons to come over, it just seems like there's something more to me. But you guys let me know down in the comments what you think about that. Think it's a little bit more, or is it just what we see is what we get? And then to break down that final frame real quick, like I said earlier, they brought over, I believe, 142, 143 survivors, and obviously some of those people died. But the entire plan for these people is to build out Central Park into basically farmland. And Maggie and Renetta feel probably a little bit more empowered when some of these group members start to grab the tools and go start to cut down things and do some of the work based off their little speech that they gave, or that Renata gave. So I just think that they're convinced that this push for hope and the open borders is going to work. But like I keep mentioning, the camera deliberately zoomed in, especially on Claudia's face when she was holding that hook, And it just makes me think that there's just something else there. Maybe she's just pissed off because she's been fighting. She's been in a hospital. She's been tied up. She's had bats swung at her face. And now when she was a leader, now she's been forced. I shouldn't say forced, but now she's been asked to work. Maybe that's why she's pissed off and just giving this death stare. But I say all of that to say about the ending of this episode. Peace is a complete illusion. And if you've watched this show for any amount of time, you already know that. I doubt you can just erase a feud, especially a blood feud, just by giving people medical treatment, and you're going to clear out some more buildings so that everybody has a place to stay. And I doubt that you could just cure that by giving people things or even making them earn it. There is something more that is going to come butting heads at some point in this season, at least with Claudia, because she seems the one that has the most disdain in the situation. And sure, while Maggie's side has guns and other type of ammo, you still gave these people some weapons, so they can hurt at least some people in the process of trying to get to you. Now, I don't think they would be stupid enough to do that. They seem a little bit more calculated, in my opinion. But if something happens to anybody, medical supplies are low, people are increasing, which usually increases the danger. And what can we say? I just think that there is some looming disaster brewing, especially the ending frame came in. There's just something coming. And if you watch to the end and you saw the trailer for next week, you definitely know that there's a little bit more brewing. Now, will it turn into a full-out battle? We shall see. I don't think so, because they have to go try to find medical supplies and going on that type of mission first. But having more mouths to feed is never a good thing in an apocalyptic situation. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot that is on the surface. We got rid of our two old overlords, but it seems like we may be bringing in at least one or two more. So, and there's always happens. There has to be a bad guy. There doesn't really have to be. The environment could be the bad guy. But with all that being said, next week is episode 4. That's obviously going to serve as our mid-season finale. So there should be a little bit more action and impact in that episode, and I really expect it, at least from the trailer. We're going to see Maggie and their crew forced to leave their brand new sanctuary that they've just built up to go off into some uncharted area to go look for medical supplies and find different things. We're going to meet a new character. I didn't catch her name, so we'll see her when we see her. But meanwhile, I can't wait to see if they pick back up in Central Park with Claudio and Bauer and what is going to happen with that situation, because are they just going to work? Is there going to be more coming with that situation? I hope they pick right back up at that point and then take us into the episode, because I'm just curious to see how that dynamic plays out, especially with the new New York community and their journey towards hope and restoring the community and building an actually functioning society. So before we get out of here, here's my debatable question for you. Was Negan 100% right when saying that these two groups were never going to 100% integrate peacefully? Or did Maggie's open door policy lay the right foundation to turn people's anger into hope, and maybe this society works out the way that she wants it to? You guys let me know down in the comments. And before we get out of here, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Please keep coming back for more, and I will see you in the next Dead City episode 4. Keep checking out the channel for more content. I want to say thank you again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.